You're starting to notice something shifting inside you, aren't you? For years, maybe decades, you've been in what's called a spiritual awakening. You've been going through the dark nights of the soul. You've been deconstructing the false beliefs that the world gave you. You've been rebuilding your life on a foundation of truth. You've been doing the relentless inner work of healing and transformation. But lately, something's changing. The intensity is starting to shift. The struggle feels different. And what you're experiencing is not a new phase of awakening. You're experiencing the beginning of the end of your awakening. Your spiritual transformation is almost complete. And what happens next will absolutely shock you. When you first began awakening, you were in crisis. You were desperate. You were broken open. Your old life had shattered, and you had no choice but to look for something real. You prayed. You struggled. You questioned everything. You couldn't go back to sleep, even though part of you desperately wanted to. The awakening was painful, disorienting, a constant state of being pulled to a higher truth, while the lower frequencies were still clinging to your energy. This was your darkness phase. This was your necessary death. This had to happen, and every moment of that struggle was necessary. Every night you cried. Every day you felt lost. Every moment of confusion was actually clarity being born. Your consciousness was being reorganized at the most fundamental level. But awakening doesn't stay in that phase forever. There's a sequence, there's a progression, and when you recognize the signs that your awakening is reaching its completion, you can stop fighting what's happening and start trusting what's emerging. You can relax into the knowing that the hardest part is over, and what's coming next is the manifestation of everything you've been working toward. This is the transition phase that most awakened people misunderstand. They think they're supposed to feel better, and they do, but they're also feeling something new, a sense of responsibility. A sense that the work of awakening was to prepare them for the work of embodying. And that's coming next. The first sign that your spiritual awakening is almost over is the cessation of anxiety. For so long, anxiety has been your constant companion. Even in your best moments, there's been a baseline nervousness, a sense that something could go wrong, an expectation that the other shoe was about to drop. But lately, something fundamental has shifted. You're still present to challenges, but the existential dread has lifted. You can sit quietly and feel genuinely at peace. Not the absence of feeling, but a deeper okayness underneath whatever emotions are present. This is not numbness. This is trust. Your nervous system has finally integrated the belief that you are safe, that the universe is trustworthy, that you don't have to be on high alert anymore. This is the mark of an awakening reaching completion. The second sign is that you no longer seek external validation. For years, you've been checking mirrors, looking to others to reflect back to you your worth, seeking approval from people who had no business deciding your value. But something shifted. You stopped caring what people thought, not because you became cold or closed off, but because you finally internalized a fundamental truth. Your worth is not determined by external circumstances. You are not less valuable because your life looks different than your neighbor's. You are not more valuable because you achieved something impressive. You are valuable because you exist. This recognition is the end stage of a genuine spiritual awakening. When you no longer need the world to validate you, you've finally completed the hero's journey of becoming yourself. The third sign is that relationships are naturally purging from your life. People are leaving. Some are choosing to go, others are being removed by circumstance. But whoever isn't aligned with your frequency anymore is dissolving from your orbit. And instead of fighting this, instead of trying to save relationships that are dying, you're allowing the natural process. You're letting go with grace. You're understanding that people come into your life for a season, and when their season ends, holding on only prolongs suffering for both of you. This releasing of people and relationships that no longer serve your growth is a sign that your awakening is reaching its final phase. You're no longer willing to dim your light for anyone, and that non-negotiable boundary is magnetic for attracting the right people and repelling the wrong ones. The fourth sign is that your dreams are becoming clearer and more prophetic. For years during your awakening, your dreams were chaotic. They were processing trauma. They were integrating fragmented parts of yourself. They were vivid and often disturbing. But as your internal integration completes, your dream life is shifting. You're receiving clear messages. You're having visions of the future. You're being shown your path. Your dreams are no longer therapeutic chaos, but divine guidance. This is a sign that your inner house is clean enough to receive clear transmissions. When your consciousness is no longer cluttered with unprocessed trauma and fragmentation, you become a clearer channel for divine wisdom. The fifth sign is that synchronicities are accelerating exponentially. The universe is winking at you constantly. You think of someone and they text you. You need guidance on something and the exact answer shows up in the next conversation you overhear. You're guided to turn down one street instead of another, and later you discover you narrowly avoided an accident. The timing of everything in your life is accelerating into perfect alignment. This is not coincidence. This is the universe confirming that you finally integrated enough of your gifts that you can recognize and work with universal orchestration. When synchronicity becomes constant, it's a sign that you're reaching a frequency where you can co-create consciously with reality itself. The sixth sign is that old triggers are losing their power. People or situations that used to send you spiraling into reactivity no longer have that power. You encounter them and you feel nothing. Or you feel the feeling, but you don't believe the story anymore. Your nervous system doesn't activate. Your past doesn't speak louder than your present. You finally integrated the wounds. You finally rewired the stories. You finally reclaimed your power from the situations that once had power over you. This is spiritual mastery in action. And when most of your major triggers have lost their sting, it's a sign your awakening is reaching its completion. The seventh sign is that your desire for solitude is increasing, while your fear of being alone is dissolving. You realize that you actually prefer your own company now. Quiet time alone feels sacred and necessary, not isolating and painful. You can be in a room full of people, but be in your own peaceful space internally. The loneliness that once haunted you has transformed into a comfortable aloneness. This is the mark of someone who has finally befriended themselves. And when you've become your own best companion, you no longer need anyone to complete you. You become available for genuine partnerships with others instead of desperate clinging. The 8th sign is that your physical symptoms are subsiding. For years during your awakening, your body has been purging, releasing, healing. You've had chronic pain, exhaustion, illness, emotional symptoms manifesting as physical conditions. But as your healing integrates, these physical symptoms are fading. Your energy is returning. Your body feels more comfortable in its own skin. You're sleeping better. You're feeling more vitality. This is because healing is not just psychological, it's cellular. And when your cells have finally integrated the belief that you're safe, that you're worthy, that you're healed, your body stops sending distress signals. The 9th sign is sudden clarity about your purpose. For the longest time, you've been working on yourself, processing, healing, integrating, and it was never clear why, but now it is. You understand exactly what you're being called to do, why your specific wounds became your specific gifts, why your particular journey prepared you for this particular work. The confusion is clearing. The purpose is crystallizing. You finally understand that everything that happened to you was preparation for what you're about to do. This clarity is the hallmark of an awakening reaching completion. You're not waking up anymore. You're stepping into what you've been waking up toward. The 10th sign is a feeling of coming home. For years during your awakening, you felt displaced, like you were living on a planet you didn't recognize, like everyone around you was asleep and you couldn't understand why you were awake, like you didn't belong anywhere. But something is shifting. You're feeling at home in your own being, at peace with your circumstances, grateful for your journey, even the painful parts. You're feeling at home in your body, at home on this earth, at home in the frequency you've become. This feeling of homecoming is the completion of a spiritual awakening. You're no longer strangers in a strange land. You've finally arrived at the place you've been journeying toward. And what's remarkable about this feeling is its permanence. It's not situational. It's not dependent on your circumstances being perfect. You could lose everything material, and you would still feel at home in yourself, because you finally integrated your wholeness. You know who you are. You know why you're here. You know that you belong exactly where you are, doing exactly what you're doing. This is the homecoming that marks the end of the dark night. Now here's what comes next. This is the part that will shock you. Your awakening didn't happen just for you. It happened so that you could awaken others, so that you could step into your assignment, so that you could use everything you've learned, everything you've integrated, everything you've become to serve. Your awakening is almost complete, not because you get to rest now, but because you're finally ready for your real work to begin. You're becoming the healed, integrated, clear vessel that can be used for something far greater than your own transformation. And this is where people often get confused. They think the end of the spiritual awakening process means they get to be at peace forever, that the struggle ends. But what actually happens is the nature of the struggle transforms. You're no longer struggling with yourself. You're no longer fighting with your wounds. You're no longer trying to figure out who you are. Now you're stepping into your purpose. Now you're beginning to understand what all of this was for. The awakening was the preparation. The embodiment is the mission. Paul wrote in Romans, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Your spiritual awakening was for a purpose. Your suffering served a function. Your transformation is not random. Everything that happened to you was training for what you're about to step into. As your awakening completes, you're being positioned to become a healer for others, a guide, a teacher, an activator, a way shower. Your gifts, hard-earned through your own dark night, are now ready to be offered to the world. This is the shock that comes when your awakening is almost over. It's not that you get to finally rest, it's that the real work is just beginning. Everything you've been doing up to this point has been preparation. The hard part was necessary, but it was also the prologue. The actual story of your incarnation is about to unfold, and you're finally ready for it. Comment below which of these 10 signs you're experiencing most strongly. Share where you're at in your awakening so others know they're not alone. Like this video to amplify the message that awakening has a purpose, that the end of the awakening phase is not the end of your story, but the beginning of your real mission. Subscribe to receive more guidance for awakened ones who are stepping into their assignments. And remember, your awakening was not for you alone. Your healing was not just for your own wholeness. Everything you've been through was preparation to become someone who can help others through theirs. You're almost there. And what comes next is going to be extraordinary.